Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our suicide prevention live webinar. This time we've chosen to talk about the farming community. Now we're hosting this from the Norfolk and Suffolk Foundation Trust, and we're a trust that covers a large rural population. And suicide has always been one of the higher factors when we look at people's occupation who die by suicide within our community. So we thought we'd have a focus today looking at this, and the fact we sent round was 133 people in the farming community lost their lives to suicide in 2019. So we're going to have a deep dive and look into why that is. So as I say, I'm Liz Howlett. I'm the Suicide Prevention Lead for the Trust, and I'm going to introduce you to the rest of our panel, some familiar faces. If we start, Diane, if we start with you as one of our...
Thank you. Good afternoon, Diane, Chief Nurse. Lovely to be with you.
And Sue, please.
Hi there, I'm Sue Wilgoss and I work for the Trust, and I'm your advisor for suicide prevention with lived experience after the loss of my own son.
And Robin?
Hi, I'm Robin Ward. I'm the People Participation Lead for the North Norfolk and Norwich Care Group.
And as we like to in these broadcasts, we really like to invite the real experts to the panel to add that. And first of all, I'd really like to introduce you to Kit.
Hi, I'm Kit Papworth. I'm a farmer in North East Norfolk. I lost my dad to suicide 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, and I'll be talking about our experiences. Thank you.
And last but not least, Emma.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm the charity manager for YANA, a charity working to improve mental health in farming and rural communities.
Thank you, and thanks everybody. You are also very much part of this live webinar. So if you could get your questions and your comments in, anything you want to know, now's the time to ask, and we'll do our best to answer those. So perhaps, Kit, could I come to you first? We'd love to hear about your dad. Tell us about him and how you lost him and what's happened since, please.
Okay, hi everybody. Yeah, we lost my dad 3 years ago. My father had been a family man and a farmer all his life. He left school at 16 and came into the family farming business. He worked hard all his life and was well respected. He grew the business with his brother very quickly, and he'd done an awful lot for the industry and for our family. He sort of suffered with a bad back, and it materialised that this has been a result of some surgery that he'd previously had, and it became clear that it wasn't going to have permanent back pain for the rest of his life. And we didn't really realise to what extent it was getting him down, and he was becoming depressed, and he was unable to do his normal active day-to-day life. And one morning in August, he decided to take his own life. There was, to us at the time, no prior warning. He left no note, and some of us had seen him the day before. My mum had seen him obviously that morning. They'd woken up together, and he took his own life before 7 o'clock in the morning. I think we, in this industry, there are a number of unique factors that we need to consider are summarised by a lack of return, a lack of money in the industry. Farmers often feel that they can't leave the farm, that they can't get help to help them do the farming. Often you're providing the family with a home, and you're making big decisions which can affect the family's income, the family's profitability on a day-to-day basis. And there's a big factor out there that we all recognise but don't always think about, which is the weather. Sometimes for you guys, when the lawn doesn't grow, it's the weather's been a bit crap or a bit cold. For us, that's can make a big change to our income. And so I think there's a lot in there. At the moment, you're all thinking about the fact that fuel's quite short, and you can't get a car to get to work, or that it's going to be more expensive to heat your home. Whereas we're thinking that gas prices mean increased fertiliser price, and it's going to affect profitability next year. So I think farming is a unique business, and you know, working alone, often not leaving the farm and not having people to talk to, can lead to those, you know, those concerns, those thoughts in your mind. And when you are alone all day, those thoughts can really build in your head. And that's why organisations like YANA are so important, and others like YANA. But sometimes it is just talking to friends and family, or someone anonymous, or your GP. And I think those are the things that we need to dig into a little bit more deeply today. The impact on us as a family was obviously devastating. I'm left with a mum without her husband of 50 years. I've got 2 sisters. There's 8 grandchildren, all of whom you know, miss our father, you know, immensely. And you know, it's a big loss to us and our farming business and the rural community. I think that's all I really want to say for a start. I'm very happy to answer questions. We've chosen to be open about this to try and help others, and if we help one other family or one other person, that's a huge achievement for us.
Thank you, Kit, and it's a brave decision to come out and talk, but it's the right decision because it helps us learn and it helps us respond. Let's bring Emma into the conversation, because Emma and YANA have been doing some amazing work across both Norfolk and Suffolk lately, and sadly, Emma, you know, Kit's story is not unusual. I was on Radio Suffolk this morning and I followed a pig farmer who was having to face the prospect of culling his pigs tomorrow. You know, these are real stories, aren't they? And very worrying.
Yeah, thank you for having YANA involved in this conversation today. It is really important. The prevalence sort of suicide and low mental health is really high in farming, and I've only been in post with YANA for 6 weeks and I don't have a farming background, so I've had to learn very quickly and talk to a lot of people to really understand what's happening and what the issues are. And I've really been very shocked actually how many of the people that I speak to are impacted directly or indirectly know someone that has been impacted by suicide. I've never in any other industry come into contact with so many people that know of someone who has lost their life through suicide or been impacted by that. So it's really highlights the need for us to have these sort of conversations and to talk and learn how to talk about suicide and just how well or not we are, just to make a difference in the farming communities so that we can improve the overall sort of well-being and mental health. And I echo like what Kit said, there's very unique factors that the industry faces and it's not seen anywhere else. So these things can, you know, affect all aspects of people working in those businesses. And there's particular parts of the farming industries that have slightly higher rates perhaps than others that are more at higher risk. So gamekeepers and foresters are 3 times more at risk. Farm workers who are maybe lower paid, have less control over their shifts, often are twice as more higher at risk than average. So there is a real need for us to continue to work hard to raise awareness and upskill the industry, and that's part of what YANA does. So YANA has 4 key aspects to its work, and they're all focused on improving the mental health of the farming and rural business communities. YANA provides a confidential helpline. It provides free counselling, which it can mobilise within a few days or a week, so we can act really quickly to support people that need that. YANA builds understanding of mental health with the aim of reducing stigma and, like we've already mentioned and touched on, encouraging conversation. The talking of how we're feeling is so important. YANA also invests in mental health first aid training, And so far we've put almost 200 people through mental health first aid training. So just as if you will have your first aid, physical first aiders, we're equipping the industry with people that are mental health first aid trained to work, to notice the signs, to notice people that might be struggling and help them to have those conversations, so that we're creating an industry that looks after itself. And that's a long-term investment to see that broader, bigger change happen. YANA also runs a national suicide prevention campaign using a Tractor Facts leaflet. So it's a really small, handy little leaflet, but it just opens up. You can't see that, but it's just got 7 actions that you can take, really simple, not complicated actions that you can take to just help talk to someone who's struggling. And it's got different signposting things, so they're really our national sort of suicide prevention campaign. So that's a little overview of what YANA does, and I look forward to seeing where the conversations go and what questions people have today. Thank you, Liz.
And that what you mentioned about, you know, the people who are supporting farming, the people who are delivering the feed and the fertilizer, being trained up in these conversations is essentially a really good piece of work, isn't it? Because what we know about suicide prevention, the earlier we can get in there, the better. The sooner someone feels able to talk and listen to, the better. So that sounds a really good piece of work. If we go to the comments, we're getting a lot of comments coming through, Kit, thanking you for sharing your dad's story, and a lot of likes to that as well. And it's a reminder, you know, everyone keep coming through. Someone's asked, can we have some of those leaflets, please? You know, and this is through, I can take it, that's the Tractor Facts through YANA. Is that possible to?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can share in the comment box an email address. You can send me an email and I'll get some sent out to you. We also have a link on our website, a form that you can fill in. So we have our Tractor Facts, but we also have vehicle stickers and window stickers. We encourage people to put on their farm vehicles or their car windows, and that's part of our Sticking Up for Better Rural Mental Health campaign. And we do know that we have had people use our services purely because they've just seen someone driving along the road with a sticker on the back of the car. So definitely have a look at our website, but we'll put some links in the chat so that you can get those.
Brilliant. And Kit, I'll come back. You know, you talked about your dad's bad back, you know, being one of the causes. Farming's a very, very physical. I'm assuming from my days when I spent on a farm and things, you know, farming is a very, very physical occupation and things. And I guess injury, high risk of injury is there as well. What support is there for, you know, when your dad, for instance, had a bad back and it, for someone like me, it would be impossible to continue a day's work. What support is there for, or was there for your dad at that time?
Yeah, my dad's was complex, so I think it's probably not helpful to focus on his in particular because his was linked to another problem. But farming has the worst health and safety record of any industry, and these two things are inextricably linked, I'm afraid. And it does boil down to lack of profitability in the industry. You know, as I said, right, no one but a fool would put all their money in farming and expect it to grow, because, you know, we expect, you know, less than 1% return on capital. You know, most people wouldn't invest in a business like that, but sadly, you know, that is the nature of farming. And even when we see high prices, it doesn't tend to necessarily mean more profitability. The industry does have a rather poor history in terms of injuries, etc. And as an industry, we're trying really hard to be better at health and safety. But you know, we're still losing an awful lot of people and having a lot of injuries in the industry. And the NHS, which many of you work for, is virtually the only place that I'm aware of that you can get any help with that.
Thank you. Questions are flooding in. Nikki Manda, Grassroots have also put together an interactive film on having a conversation with someone who might be suicidal. So that's similar to the Zero Suicide Alliance, which Gay's put a comment on. Thank you. Menscraft. Hello, Menscraft. Menscraft operates across Norfolk and Waveney, supporting men who are in distress and experiencing suicidal ideation. We offer one-to-one support, emotional and practical referrals can be made through Menscraft. Emma, is that something YANA links in with around those? Because or correct me if I'm wrong, is farming still a very sort of like a male orientated occupation?
Look, like all industries, farming is changing, and there is an awful lot of women, a lot of very hard-working women in our industry. But yeah, the majority of people who are working on the land and driving machinery are men, but there's an awful lot of women in this industry now. And they're a really good force for nature, for change within the industry, and working incredibly hard. You know, and the more women we have in this industry, probably the better, because they probably keep an eye out for us more than we keep an eye out for each other. I do think the conversation thing is a tricky one. You know, it's probably the best thing we've got to help each other. But I think because we are working in quite an isolated industry, we work on our own a lot, drive around a lot, sit in a machine alone a lot. You know, it is trying to spot the people who aren't having the conversations rather than the people who are talking. That, you know, that's the hardest thing, I think. You know, to try and see the people who aren't communicating with you as often as they perhaps should or could. And that I think is probably the thing I would like people to take away from this. You know, just to make sure that, and it isn't always just the tractor driver, maybe his wife or his children, or those are the people we really need to make sure they're okay. And it isn't just, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. You know, it's a bigger conversation than that.
Huge. Emma, about Menscraft and stuff. Has YANA heard of Menscraft? Because for those, you know, we were blessed to have Menscraft on one of our webinars a few months ago. You know, talking about how they do practical skills with men to help them talk and things, amongst other things, of course. Tim, I know you said, but is that something YANA would consider working with more?
Yeah, YANA does signpost to other organisations, and I'm happy to have a conversation with Menscraft. I think one of the things that YANA has done is just tries to stick to a few things and do them really well, but we're always looking how else to support people, whether that's through other organisations or, you know, with new sort of developments. So yeah, happy to have a chat around how we can work with them a little bit more. One of the things about YANA is that being focused on the farming communities is the people that we work with that provide the support often have a farming background or really know the area and therefore the issues, because we found with farming, just from county to county, farming can be slightly different, or, and forgive me because I don't understand completely, Kit will correct me if I'm wrong, but there's slightly different challenges, there's a slightly different sort of landscape. So for us to have counsellors local to the area which people are accessing counselling from is really a real strength and actually really valuable for the people that we're supporting.
Picking up on what you just said there, Emma, about you know, YANA, and Nikki is joining us from Gloucestershire and is wondering about, you know, YANA, does it provide national support or is it just local?
So we work in East Anglia and Worcestershire. We do have calls to our helpline from people outside of those areas, and we take those calls and we respond to them. And then YANA in its early days created a directory, a national directory of support and help for organisations for the farming industry. And the Prince's Countryside Fund now manage that and took that over from YANA. But we still use that and distribute that around East Anglia. And so we will refer people that are not in our areas to local services that they can access help from, because there's luckily an increasing amount of local services in other areas. So I have conversations with people all over the country who want to spread the word and take our tractor facts, but we don't provide the counselling or the mental health first aid courses outside of East Anglia and Worcestershire.
Do you get a lot of questions, from other places trying to set up stuff similar? Because from my recollection, so YANA was one of the very first on this territory looking at suicide prevention in the farming community.
Yeah, so when YANA, before YANA started, actually, the founder spent 18 months talking to lots of people, doing lots of research to make sure that a product or an organisation service was developed that was really cost effective, but impactful and made a difference, and therefore was going to be sustainable and here for a long time. So they didn't want something that was just going to make a difference for a few years and then disappear. And they've they've achieved that really well. So we have a number of conversations with different counties and people wanting YANA in different counties, and we're happy to have conversations with people and work with them to help them create something that's right for their county.
Thank you. And just I'm really grilling you at the moment, Emma. Sorry, but we've had lots of questions come in about YANA. You offer mental health first aid. Do you offer applied assist first aid training? What is the?
At the moment, the only thing we offer is the 2-day mental health first aid training, and our trustees recently reviewed that and decided that we're just going to stick with that at the moment, because that's then the fullest sort of training I think that people can have with the most in-depth insight and practical sort of skills and tools. I'm not actually familiar with the assist applied suicide training, so it's something that I might go away and look into now.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And you've got a volunteer for your helpline. How do people support you?
So there are loads of volunteering opportunities on our helpline. All our helpline callers are Samaritan trained, and if you know anything about Samaritans, that's quite a lengthy process. So it's at least 2 years of training to be a Samaritan caller. There are loads of other ways. The email is in the chat, so if you want to email me and get in touch, I can have a chat with you around how else you might want to get involved. But yeah, generally it's fundraising, volunteering in all sorts of ways, and applying to do the mental health first aid training.
Brilliant, excellent, thank you. Nikki's also asked, do you have an electronic version of the YANA leaflet? I think we'll be able to put that on the post, are we, or we'll be able to put it on our website later on?
Yeah, we can get it. I can probably not manage to do that right now, but I can get something for you to put somewhere if you would like something. Yeah.
Thank you. And again, we've had highlighted the chronic impact, on suicide, of chronic pain, which will obviously resonate with Kit, and we do know that's a massive thing in suicide prevention. When someone has a chronic illness, regardless what occupation you're in, that really does affect how someone sees the future, and we do need to address it. We do need to talk about it, offer what pain management techniques we can, really think out of the box with this and recognise it. Just a brief question on men's craft. Is it the same thing as men's shed? They're closely related, aren't they? Men's shed is more sort of the practical task where people go to do things. Men's craft expands much more into that, but have a check on the website, or Tim might be able to give me a better definition of what's going on. Farmers also have access to many mediums that can be used to take their lives. So we're talking about methods and access to to ways in which we can take. We don't want to get too graphic in that, do we, Kit? But it is very true, isn't it? It's one of the big factors.
I think anybody was going to stop my father, and I do entirely agree that farmers have an awful lot of methods if they've decided to take their own life. So this is not about stopping them having access to a way of doing it, but equally, even if we tried, I don't think that would be possible. So I don't think that's a place we should head to. I think we should head, very much stick to trying to prevent the thought in the process, and then work with people who are feeling low, feeling down, and struggling with some really tough decisions. Farming is really hard at the moment and looking to get harder and harder over the next few years as farming changes. Farming is is an industry that changes all the time, often the pressure of world markets and also government whims, for want of a better word. And so, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the agricultural sector going forward. And I think we're going to have to keep a really close eye out on people, and all of us have that responsibility. Most people know a farmer or know a farming family. I think we're only on average only 2 generations away from farming, all of us. So if you know someone, just make sure they're okay, even if it's your local farmer, the guy in the street, the guy you see in the shop or the pub. Just make sure he's okay, because I think multiple methods of taking your own life, and focus on taking them away.
Yeah, and what I would say to my colleagues in the mental health care trust, well, any mental health care trust, when you're called round to assess someone from a farming community, have a good look round you, start questioning what does this person have access to, and ask, if somebody asks those direct questions, related around there, so you can actually together come forward with a safety plan as to how you can lessen access to things during a very acute time. John King's asked what help's available for the through the NFU, National Farmers Union. Kit or Emma, are you aware?
I'm aware of anything specific from the NFU, and I'm slightly involved in the NFU in that I sit on a board. I'm not aware of anything, charities, etc., of which YANA is, in my opinion, the best known, certainly in this area. But there are a number of other charities, but I'm not aware of any help through the NFU.
Thank you. It's great to hear you talking about the health and safety aspect. As well as the NHS, I work in the live events and the theatre sector, where they also have a terrible history of health and safety and bad working practices. Our unions are vital to offer health and safety training and leading conversation on change, including around mental health and working practices, which lead to depression, burnout and other problems. Do your union support you in a way that you are seeing a positive change in the area? So I guess that links to the previous question.
Yeah, I mean, the NFU have been absolutely excellent, and Stuart Roberts in particular have been excellent at trying to promote good health and safety practice in this industry. And the statistics for people dying in this industry and being seriously injured are absolutely frightening. And whilst not the conversation or not the topic of this conversation, they are scary. But I see the two as linked. And if we could improve one, we would almost certainly improve the other.
Thank you. Nikki's Emma's just making you aware yellow wellies, which you might want to have a look into, part of the Farm Safety Foundation. I'll check them out later on as well. That sounds fascinating. Men's Craft, yes, a point well made on reaching those who do not come forward. We actively encourage family and friends as well as professionals to get in touch if they have concerns about their loved ones. We have a call last week from the UAE from someone concerned about her mate. Well, I think that's UEA. Well, not United Arab Emirates. Whilst his consent, we made contact with him. And yes, Emma, please do get in touch. We've got a webinar coming up in the next month on sharing of information with families and how we can share information. So that would be good to for people to see that as well. And just clarify, Men's Craft work closely with many men's sheds in the area, but it's a separate organisation. Asking if how do we get how do we get this message about information and support to help young farmers? So Emma, Young Farmers is actually an organisation. Is YANA involved with young farmers?
Yeah, so I've actually got quite a few talks in the next couple of months at various young farmers meetings. We've got Stowmarket Young Farmers and Loddon Young Farmers have chosen YANA as their charity of the year, which is amazing. So we'll be able to work with them a little bit more throughout the year as well. As part of my role starting, I'm also now based in the Norfolk Showground and Trinity Park at Suffolk, and both young farmers have also moved into their offices as well, so that's creating some opportunities once they're in properly for me to connect with them a little bit more. And I have some ideas about how we hopefully will be able to work a bit more closely in the future moving into next year. We've recently been to Otley College to talk to all their agricultural students to raise their awareness, because I absolutely agree, if we can talk to people and help them to understand right at the beginning of their careers, then they're going to be much better placed and be able to develop their skills and resilience to have a healthier sort of working life and also support to each other as well. So yeah, that's definitely a really important point.
Thank you, and apologies, Menscraft. It was the United Arab Emirates, and Menscraft really is linking out. Thank you for that. This is interesting. There's a real emerging evidence base for acceptance and commitment therapy, third wave CBT, for chronic pain, when pain is going to be there for the long haul. Wraparound services seem key to access this support. That's something I personally haven't heard about. But certainly, I'd like to hear more about that if that's possible. YANA, are you linked in with Chris Pyburn and Melanie Holland with the suicide prevention program? I know that answer. I know you are. That's YANA have been, probably prior to you starting, Emma. YANA were linked around our. As a suicide prevention partnership, we meet with public health and CCGs and all the other supporting agencies, which YANA is one. And YANA has been really actively involved around the suicide prevention table in both Norfolk and Suffolk suicide prevention meetings. So that's really useful. So we've come to, at the moment we've got a temporary break in the questions. I'm going to go to my panel, or to sort of like ask, have you got any questions which you'd like to ask? Putting you on the spot time. Or Kit's and Emma, have you got any reflections so far, things we perhaps haven't covered? And go on. Yes, Robin, thank you.
Just, it was for Kit, really. I hope you don't mind me asking. I was just wondering, what support were you able to access or was available to you immediately after what happened with your dad? Did you find it easy to access support, or was it a struggle? What was your experience?
All of us within the sort of close family dealt with it in different ways. It was interesting to, I have one sister who lives out of Norfolk and another who lives within Norfolk, and obviously we had my mum, who was at the time living with my dad. And we all dealt with it in different ways and all accessed help. We were fortunate to have family friends who were in the NHS with GPs, etc. So we all drew on different things at different times, and some of us continue to do so. I think it is a very individual thing. I think you've got to look for different sorts of help. And I think I would also pay tribute to from my point of view, my close family, who are real support to me, my in-laws, etc., who are really, fantastic and just always there to talk to us, and we're always there to support. We have a very close family, children, partners, etc., who are brilliant. But all of us have required help over time, and there is a lot of help out there if you go looking. But I think the challenge is, farmers tend to be quite stoic in these things, trying sort of slightly long suffering. I think we'll sort of get through this and it'll be all right next year. And you tend to get into a spiral of thinking, you know, that you don't need any help. I'm very fortunate that I spend quite a lot of time with other people, but I can quite easily see that you know, some farmers, you know, I remember speaking to a guy a few years ago now who was very proudly told me the only time he'd taken any time off was when he got married, and it was 30 years ago. You know, most of us try and take time off from our day jobs, whereas farmers tend to live at their work. They never actually leave the farm unless it's for a thing that's planned. And that's quite a difference from most people's normal day-to-day jobs, and I think that is a contributory factor. But in answer to the question, we all chose different ways of doing it. Lots of help available. I've done quite a lot of NLP in the past, so I was able to access some of that, and all sorts of, you know. But I think family is just start point, you know, friends, and just speaking to people.
There's a question I'd like to ask you, Kit. From my time growing up, I had horses, and I used to keep my horse on a farmer's yard. And he was a very old traditional farmer in the sense that when he drove a tractor, I couldn't work out how it stayed together. It was that the technological advance in farming has been massive over the last few decades, and I often think about that farmer and wonder how he would adjust and things to how things are done now. Has that been an issue?
I think it is an issue, but I think in a way that perhaps doesn't come across so obviously. Advances in technology have helped us hugely to do more, and they've also helped us to replace people who say are retiring. So the consolidation within the farming industry is extraordinary. You know, the number of farms maybe in your own villages or in the areas that you know, the number of active farmers is reducing very dramatically, and that's because you know, it's not very profitable, and you know, the farms that are very efficient are choosing to do more and more if they can. And what that means is there are less and less people on farms, and that those guys who are still on farm are doing more and more themselves using the full technology, so satellite technology, etc. And so the tractor that was, you remember, being sort of tied together with a bayless wine and some cable ties, it isn't really something that fits particularly well into a modern farming environment, certainly not a modern arable farming environment. And so a lot of those guys are working alone, you know, using satellite guidance. You can spray, drill, plough, etc., all hours of the day and night. And as an employer, I have to think very carefully about the people who are out there using that technology, who are able to work alone because the technology is available to them, and the hours that they're working. You know, farming traditionally works some very long hours at peak times, and so we have to think carefully about how much time those guys are having off, and encouraging them to take more time away from their day jobs, just at a time when they're thinking, I really need to pay the mortgage, I've got young children and a young family at home. And so the pressures on staff, you know, on the people who are actually doing the day job, working out on farms, you know, is big, as well as the guy who owns the farm itself. But yeah, technology's played a big part, but not necessarily in the way you think.
Yeah, thank you. How do we primary care GPs get to ask questions and look for warning signs? So we have, so on the the chaps on the primary care, maybe the first people to come across, who people may approach, you know, who are suicide. So I guess that there's the things which we always sort of like point out is listen to what that person's saying and what indicators they're giving, what safety advice they got, and things. So we've discussed in here, you know, it's about asking access to means, isn't it? Understanding what's going on for that person at the time, with, you know, additional pressures of farming with climate and things. Is there anything else which GPs need to be looking out for? What do we be saying? That's about him, and really sort of, you know, I guess, you know, sort of, you know, it's about looking at what support is available through YANA, etc. Ed from Farmers Weekly have contacted Kit. Thank you for sharing your story, and I'm sorry to hear about your loss. Following on from the question about young farmers, many farms are family run and handed through generations. Is talking openly about your mental health from a young age and understanding the signs of poor mental health a way we can help the industry? Getting big nods.
Absolutely, yeah, totally agree. And it is really good that, you know, the agricultural colleges and the young farmers, etc., are talking about this, but it's easy to talk about it when everything's going well, and you know, we as a family felt this was a good time to talk about this. Today, I think it's Ag Mental Health Day. It's also National Farmers Day and Mental Health Week, and alongside loads of other stuff. But yeah, Ed's absolutely right. You know, this is a good thing to do, to raise awareness within the industry, particularly in young people, and that is, you know, that is all you can do apart from look out for people who are around you. Absolutely.
And oh, sorry, Emma, carry on. Sorry.
That's okay. Just in response to that, I think it's absolutely right. If we can normalise talking about how we're feeling and checking in each day with each other from toddler age, then we raise generations who are more self-aware and are able to reflect and therefore look after their own mental health and well-being and understand how to help each others. In Suffolk, I know Suffolk Mind have been able to produce a storybook which has gone out to all primary school age children, and they're doing a lot of work with young children. So there's opportunities there and resources available for us to look at linking in with, potentially to try to establish that within farming families and farming communities as well. But that's definitely the aim for everyone, I think, is that we all grow up just with that self-awareness and understanding how do we look after ourselves and how do we look after each other. I just wanted to come back to the GPs thing as well, as body language is really important, as well as what people are saying, because often people will tell you that everything's okay, but we can observe different things when we look at them. But one of the other things I think it's really important to say on this webinar is the need to ask the direct question around, have you thought about self-harming or suicide? You know, have you thought about it? Have you made any plans? Because often people are scared to be direct about it, but actually there's power in that being direct. It creates an opportunity to make a connection with that person. It can bring a sense of relief to that individual because suddenly it's put out there rather than just internally carrying it around with them. So I think that it's really important for us all to know that it's okay to just ask the question. We're not going to put that seed in their head. If it's there, it's already there. If it's not there, it's not going to make them suddenly start thinking along those lines. And that's one of the big myths, I think, around suicide. So I think it's important just to say that on this webinar.
Yeah. And this will link to the next question, and also what Kit was talking about earlier on. It's that GP does also at that point need to consider, can we involve family? Who can we share this information with? Because sometimes it sounds, Kit, like it was difficult for your dad to share how he was feeling with you guys, but perhaps if it had been in a position where a GP would have seen him and the GP would have said, how about I help you share that information, that may have helped. I don't know.
As I said at the start, I think my dad was a very private individual, and I think lots of farmers are. And I think in hindsight, we could have dug deeper. There were warning signs there that all of us could have picked up on. And, you know, my dad saw all of his children, obviously his wife, and all the time. And, you know, I mean, I saw him the day before he died. And you know, he's about to take his own life. So I think, you know, that it is a huge part of education, but, you know, availability of somebody to talk to is, you know, was not a factor for my dad. You know, there were plenty of us around and we were all saying, how are you feeling? Are you okay? You know, how's the movement today? All this sort of stuff, you know, but at no point did he avail himself of that. And he'd seen GPs several times and consultants, etc. So I don't think anyone really thought that he had serious mental health issues until he took his own life. And in hindsight, obviously with more awareness and more understanding of it, I can see it very clearly. I didn't see it at the time.
No, and that's not unusual. But any way we can bring the family in is great. And it's just at this point is just a thought in relation to NSFT's assessment of the potential whole family impact of trauma and stress at the point of individual assessment. How much do we consider demographics of a service user's family group in relation to considering our support to the whole family units? And that's one of the things that we need to be aware of trust, how, just how important it is that, we are looking at the family, how involved they are, what support they can provide, how safe they feel, looking after someone with who is risky, and what support we need to offer them in between. So we've just had a question again about the impact of high tech. Thank you for that. Again, Nikki's returned to the GP for the question about the signs that a GP should look for. Over here in Gloucester, we're putting together some bespoke training for GPs on being suicide aware and how to intervene and how to support those who've been bereaved. And that training was certainly on offer in Suffolk, and I believe in Norfolk through the public health. So I will have, so if that GP does want to get in touch with me, I will get in touch with you with the respective public health and see if there is any training which is on offer, or perhaps the public health are on the audience now and can answer that question for us. Kay Smith, I'm a counsellor and my stepdad was a farmer, and I had to sell his family farm when I was in my early 20s due to not being able to make it work despite diversification. Are there any resources for farmers who are having to leave the industry and find alternative work, and support for the emotional toil that may take? And I've got very much in my head that poor farmer who's about to cull his his pigs. What support's available? Kit?
I think this is something that we really need to be aware of. I'm sure YANA are talking about it, and I think the trust needs to be really aware of that. Farming is about to go through probably the biggest change it's gone through since the war. If the government are going to start paying farmers to stop farming, and the economics of farming are very tricky at the moment, I think you're going to see a lot of people leaving the industry, potentially losing their homes, the family's inheritance, lots of things around that. And I really think Kay Smith has highlighted something that we all need to be very aware of over the next 5 years. Support to agriculture is going to fall away by a huge amount for direct farming, and like producing food are going to be asked to produce bird food and environmental goods, and encouraged to retire. And most farmers, retirement isn't something they're really focused on. So I think there's a huge amount of work to be done there at a very difficult time for the industry. There's masses to talk about in that space.
And before we start to look to close, and I'm going to come round to the panel to start thinking about what they've learned and what they're reflecting on, just giving you a warning, panel. Nikki's mentioned the assist training, which is helping spot the signs of suicide. It's a 2-day course and includes role play. And as she says, it's not an easy course, but it's worthwhile and helpful. It's something we are bringing to NSFT. We're going to be having again one of our future webinars on the suicide training, which is available. But if you're interested, from NSFT, if you're interested in assist training, there will be an opportunity for you to do that as well. Again, Kit, we've had so many thank yous for coming on and sharing your story about your bravery and your dad. Just to probably finish on from the questions, Laurie from Cheshire East Public Health has said, well said, Emma, asking direct questions is important, and especially using the words, are you feeling suicidal? Training from Champs offers guidance and practice. So thank you. So panel, let's have a think about what we've heard and what we've learned. Diane, you know how I love to put you on the spot as our chief nurse.
Yeah.
What's your message for NSFT and Norfolk and Suffolk and all the rest of the people who are contributing as well?
Oh, so many reflections. But firstly, thank you, Kit, and thank you, Emma, Kit for sharing your story, and Emma for all of the wonderful work you're doing. I was really struck by a lot of the things that Kit said, which I hadn't thought about and I feel a bit guilty about that actually, about the loneliness and the isolation associated to a farmer's work. But also I was struck by how proud, how dignified and how committed farmers are. And I know particularly when we think about factors in suicide, they are factors. You know, when you are proud and when you're really dignified, it's hard to ask for help. It really is. And I agree with Emma about the need to tackle stigma and have conversations to normalise both mental health and mental ill health as well, because I don't think we talk about that enough. And I again was struck by things that Kit was saying about the difficulties that many people are facing, but farmers in particular. And I think it's going to be a hard winter. And as Kit describes, it's going to be a hard few years. And the fact that there's something about communities and how communities come together and people ask the questions and how people check in. But I guess another thing what struck me, and my final point, is that what you see on the outside when you're talking to people isn't often what's going on in the inside, and we need to probe more, we need to listen more, and we really need to think about that, because Kit described, you know, people saw his dad the day or the day before and nobody kind of knew. And we hear that so many times, don't we, Liz? We really do. There's this kind of myth that people who maybe are contemplating taking their life are, you know, are kind of head in hands, but often that's not the case. And it's, for me, it's just so much learning, and I thank you.
And particularly when they've made the decision as well, that, you know, suicide is the right option, often feeling satisfied with it, relieved they've made the decision, they're in control, they have their plans. It's horrifying to talk about, really, isn't it? But it does disguise things so much. So the more we ask, the more we probe, the more we ask those who have loved ones around them or have daily contact with them, the better we're doing, really, and the safer service we're offering. Sue, how's this webinar been for you as a non-farming lady?
I've learned a lot. You know, I think Diane has basically said it all, that, you know, the thoughts in my head, don't say sorry. And it's just been really, really good to see and hear what is out there as resources for the farming community, and those who are on the call now, you know, you learning that and sharing that awareness of what is out there, because yeah, it's very important.
Yeah, and we need to keep having some big discussions, Sue, as to what, you know, for suicide prevention across Norfolk and Suffolk Foundation Trust, how we keep that actively in the minds of people in the clinical teams, and you know, closer relation with YANA. Looking at how we can work closer together. We'll have some really good discussions on that. Robin, can you give me your reflections and thoughts?
I have to say what Sue said. Diane summed it up beautifully, but I will just say thank you, Kit, for coming and sharing your story, and thank you for being so brave in sharing it, because by doing so, I think you're making people think. You're doing what I think you're trying to set out to do. Emma, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom and all the work that you're doing as well. But I think what Diane said was correct about the face value. You can't take people just as you see them. We do have to probe more. Something that really struck me today, though, is that I didn't know about all of these different things. So the importance of networking, and when you see good practice in other areas and learning from one another. I think Nikki Maunder, I believe it was, on the chat, I've reached out to her to get in touch with her. She's in Gloucestershire, but she's clearly doing some work over there, and I think it would be really good to keep in touch. I just think there's so much to be said about making this conversation happen and keeping it going. Each time we do these, I learn more each time, and I'm hoping the people that attend also do as well, and they see what's available and what's out there, because I think that's the only way that we can challenge and overcome the difficulties we have around suicide, is by keeping an open conversation and learning from one another. And as much as it is to probe and ask questions, it's also okay to ask for help as well yourself. So if you get in a situation and you've got someone you're worried about, reach out and get help yourself to get help for that person. Don't be afraid and feel on your own with it as well. There's so many organisations out there you can reach out to. We can definitely share some more in the chat, so they're available, but YANA is obviously a good example in itself. But yeah, I'm really pleased to be part of something like this, and just want to thank everybody for their involvement today and all their really good questions.
It's great, isn't it, Robin? And I feel very fortunate how we're going in Norfolk and Suffolk at the moment, where we are having these open conversations. Suicide is a difficult subject, but the more we talk about it, and people and it's odd, but people are actually not enjoying these they're feeling the benefit of these conversations and talking openly, and that's what we want across the country, really, isn't it? So but let's we're obviously focusing massively on Norfolk and Suffolk, but we want a big change and stuff. So and Kit, I'm going to come into you. We are indebted that you would come and talk so personally about this, how this has affected you for the good of future generations. Any final words, anything you think we might have missed, or what we need to do?
I don't know whether you need to do. I mean, it is about getting that message out about communication. Obviously I lost my dad. I'm grateful to my sisters and my mum for supporting me in allowing me to come and talk to you, and obviously all the online participants. YANA was set up when we lost a really fantastic farmer and a really great guy several years ago now, and the work still goes on. I don't think Emma's ever going to run out of work, because there's a huge amount of communication and just getting that message out there. And if we can just save, one of us can save one person from taking their own life, we've achieved so much. So yeah, it's important to keep talking and checking each other, and for GPs and health professionals who are seeing farmers, or maybe not seeing farmers, if somebody you've seen quite a lot of who suddenly disappears off the radar, maybe just ask that question, because you might make the difference.
Yeah. And I've really benefited from hearing about your dad, Kit. It really does. When someone shares such a personal story, it goes to your heart, and it drives your brain as to why we need to make change and things. So thank you for that. And Emma, new to the job, straight away on a webinar. How's it been for you?
It's been really useful, really good. Again, I'd thank you to Kit for sharing your story. People like yourself who are willing to go out there with it are just essential in creating that change and raising awareness. So it's been really good to hear as well from a very experienced farmer, confirming some of the things that I've learnt I've got them right. So that's been good for me. But no, it's been really useful with all the questions coming in and the points that people raise. It really helps you to sort of think a bit differently, and also understand how people are thinking about this issue, and the willingness and the interest that people have in being part of helping to change that and prevent that loss by suicide is really encouraging. So it's really good, but also I think very similar to what Robin said, really, the need to work together and link up with other people and other organisations and be connected to provide a really good awareness and support. I think it is one of the things that I'll continue to sort of take away from these things.
Thank you, Emma, and you were totally fab today. Really good. And again, thanks to everybody who's watching. Thank you to everyone who's had conversations with me about farming before the webinar, giving me so much information. And I'm thanking you in the future for the conversations we're going to have after, because I know we'll have quite a bit of discussion afterwards as to how we want to bring what we've learned today into our future practice and what's needed. So thanks in advance for that. And that's it. I'm closing this webinar now. As I say, please be in touch. If all the panel just stay on for a little while just afterwards, we always just have a little wellbeing chat, and that's what I'd advise to you folks as well. Have a bit of time, have a cup of tea, have a think about what we've discussed, and take good care of yourself. Thank you. Bye bye.